So today we're going to be hearing from one of our own members, Nick Denton. He's going to be speaking about different growing mediums like natural organic living soil, aeroponics, hydroponics, stuff like that, and the different outcomes and plant metabolites from them. So, all right, I'm gonna let him get to it.
What's up, y'all? So yeah, I'm Nick. Some of you know me, some of you do not. I'm a senior bioanalytics track. I have a love for making plant medicine, and that's why I came here. So it's an honor to be able to talk to you about something that I enjoy. And if I say anything that's like not right or not well researched or something, and like I assume y'all are all smarter than me, so please just tell me, and I will hopefully be able to clear it up. But basically, Jacob asked me to talk about the different growing mediums in the industry or worldwide, or just that people that grow medicinal plants are familiar with. And how do I make this into presentation mode? There we go. So it's an intensely personal question. You must ask yourself, why am I growing? Because there are many different cultivation tactics for different systems. Now, we have to also understand what the WTFW, what the flora want. They want water, they want CO2, they want nutrients, they want sunlight. So the question is, how can we provide these in ideal ratios to encourage the intended growth? Not just the ideal ratios, but also the ideal form. And so in my research, what I've discovered is there's essentially three main growing techniques. That is traditional agriculture, which has been going on, as far as we know, the longest. Although if you look into prehistory, there are many different farming techniques out there in ancient civilizations. But withholding all that, we also have hydroponics, which is a newer system that they teach here, obviously. And then there's the living soil, which really is part of the natural, the way nature does it. And so I figured I'd start there because it's easier for me to understand the natural way and then take away from that how we have been able to supplement it to kind of do what, I mean, we're trying to do it better. We all have different reasons for growing, and sometimes nature is not producing the things we need exactly. So essentially, the tactic of living soil is to mimic the plant's naturally occurring conditions, because this will support the processes that are in the plant for heightened natural organic development of a target species. So soil scientists say that nature is defined by the soil triangle consisting of silt, clay, and sand. And what really the focus is here is like up in the organic matter, the O layer and the A layer, where you find the most microbial content. Now, living soil takes advantage of the microbial ecology, among other forms of life, the fungal presence of bacteria, protozoa, pollinators, arthropods, decomposers, worms, all these things, to encourage ecological stability. Friendly competition between species leads to more resilient plants, oftentimes higher yields, more genetically expressive plants. When plants have these environmental conditions, they're shown to produce a wider range of secondary metabolites in many different directions. Plants have thousands of different metabolites, and the plants are really a large part of their phenotypes are determined by their environment. So like I said, studies show, and so in a healthy living soil, like if you go into the forest that's been one of these old growth forests that's been around for thousands of years, and you take a scoop out of the dirt, there is likely more different species in that handful of dirt than there are people on the planet. And so that goes to show how much, like, what I consider wisdom there is in the soil. And what we've learned is that, it's basically impossible for us humans to try to recreate that type of life support system in the lab or in an artificial system. So yeah, population of 50 billion, there's a lot of life out there or in there. And so what to farm means, if you talk to some of these farmers who are familiar with these techniques, obviously a lot of the focus is on growing plants and laying out your plants and building an environment for them, but it's really the focus is on feeding the soil. And it's known that all life begins in the decomposition of organic matter. So how does this happen? Like in the industry, if you don't have a farm, obviously in this last slide, like this right here is what you would see in nature. But if you're trying to mimic living soil in your house or in your garden bed or turn your backyard into re-enliven it, you're not going to be able to like put a bedrock or some unweathered plant material into the bottom of your soil mix. So what the industry folk do who are not using organically or naturally occurring farmlands, they use the 3-3-3 rule. And so that's a very basic recipe for creating a base of living soil, which you can then build on with different organic amendments, different nutrients, different organic matter content to kind of curtail to your desired output, to your certain species, your certain environment, this can be done inside or outside, like I said. And the benefit, like the great benefit of this is that living soil is self-regenerative. It's self-regulating. You don't have to like pH your water. You don't even have to water as often. There's much higher water holding capacities. You don't have to, you may have to manage pests per se. If you get a pest infestation in your living system, it's kind of, that lets you know that you have an ecology that is out of balance. And so when you're working with these, you're really looking at how to maintain an entire natural system, an entire ecology, not just a singular plant, but how all of this stuff is interconnected and feeding off of each other and interdependent. And so if you can get it right, then, if you can take care of your garden, basically, a pot of living soil will gain in quality as it's reused and hopefully be able to last forever. You should be able to hand it down to your grandchildren if you wish to. One of the drawbacks is that you need land. Did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I have a question. When
Please.
you're saying it has like a higher water retention capacity, is that in comparison to what?
That's in comparison to non-living soils, traditional agriculture, which has an absence of microbial populations, which doesn't seek to use the microbes to fix their nutrients, to fix nitrogen. So without the 7 billion species working together to continuously break down organic matter content, the water, I don't know if anybody in here grows, like oftentimes growers will like flush their plants out because they'll add too many nutrients or something will be wrong and they'll just have to flush it with water. That's not something you would ever want to do with living soil. And it is something that you shouldn't ever have to do because you're taking care of what your job is to do is to take care of the microbes in the soil, and the microbes take care of the soil, the microbes take care of the plants, the microbes take care of the plants, it's a chain. Eventually the metabolites of the plants benefit from it as well. So
in regards to living soil's water retention
capacity,
like did you compare it to any like substrates or media used in hydroponic and soilless media?
I did not compare it to any in soilless media, no.
Some have like a really large water retention capacity,
right,
like using rock wool and stuff like that.
Okay, interesting. But that wouldn't be soilless. You said rock.
No, it technically is soilless.
Okay.
It's like you kind of just germinate the plants in like a little cube.
Okay.
Just stick that in, and there's no soil.
Okay.
The roots come out of the rock gutter or whatever you're running through
To
it.
the reservoir,
Yeah.
the strip, whatever you're calling it.
Okay. So I'm not familiar with that, but that's good to know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess one of the only drawbacks here is that you need land. And you need to know how to take care of a living ecology. So also, sorry.
I'd say it's definitely more expensive too. Like the startup, no, but in the long run, compared to hydroponics, it's definitely more expensive.
Okay. Well, I would argue that it's might even be far cheaper depending on how you're sourcing your amendments.
Yeah, I mean, if
'Cause-
you already have completely fertile soil.
Yeah.
come by.
Yeah, if you already have completely fertile soil, it's hard. I was going to try to talk about that because, like, you know, people are, you can, again, you can build this soil, you can build a living soil in a pot. That's not a completely fertile soil. Something that's completely fertile is something that's much older, or it's got a diverse range of organic matter, which is constantly feeding it. So a lot of times what you'll see is people will turn living soil systems into something more advanced, like permaculture here, which layers different trees, shrubs, herbs in a staggered manner so that one plant is feeding the nutrients to the other, which is feeding to the other and to the other. And ultimately it's just I mean, nature is a giant compost pile. Like that's what the forest is. And so you just are trying to really feed the soil in as much stepwise, you know, with as much variety and diversity as possible. Nature thrives on ecological diversity. And I said it earlier, like a little bit of friendly competition, it encourages growth and development of more expressive phenos. And that's important because, again, the broad spectrum of metabolites, oftentimes, there's been some recent studies that come out that have shown the difference between indoor grown and outdoor grown, and the presence of the ecology contributes greatly to the composition of the plant itself. So, what's up?
So I like this graph about like the fungi dominated soil. So
Mhm.
have you like heard anything like with like hydroponics or like aeroponics about like, so like in forests, we know that trees are interconnected by like mycorrhizal fungi, and they communicate and like aid in the passing of nutrients from like one plant to the next.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if like you can like add like probiotics to like a hydroponic system. Is that like a thing, or?
You do an aquaponics, you'll add
Mm,
beneficial bacteria that'll like turn ammonia to nitrate.
Awesome. So in aquaponics and hydroponics, you have to use anaerobic microbes, or is that what you're saying? I was not under the impression that there were microbes in hydroponics. I thought,
Yeah, in aquaponics there are. So like when you have like a living system with, like we use prawns in the lab.
right.
So we have prawns and this species of bacteria that the label on the thing we added didn't even say the species name.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's proprietary, but-
That makes a lot of sense that they're doing that. I'll get there. So, yeah, I mean, I'd see it kind of like as an art, depending on the plants, depending on the species you're trying to grow. There are many different plants. There are many different environments. Obviously, aquatic plants different from terrestrial plants, different from desert plants. So the base of this 3-3-3 rule I gave is really just a baseline before you can begin to add your own amendments. And so I don't know if I explained that well enough, but the 3-3-3 rule is like you are taking a third organic matter content, aka compost, a third of aeration, which is, you know, sand and rocks and vermiculite, and then a third base material like cocoa coir, peat moss are the two mainly used ones. I would recommend against peat moss because it's the harvesting is kind of detrimental to the environment. They actually banned all peat moss imports across the UK. But if like you're doing living soil, then hypothetically it would last forever, so it's good. But oftentimes especially in the learning process, you might go through some different soils. So it's good to just like be ergonomic in your choices and how you host these things, especially with the compost. Like you can go to the store and buy a bunch of mushroom compost. I always like to get multiple different forms of compost, mushroom compost, cow manure, stuff from the co-op. They give out free compost over there, and that's all organic from all the local farms and stuff. So you really want to focus on, I believe diversity is a very important factor in producing a stable ecology. So that's enough out of that side. Richard, what's
Yeah,
up,
I
bro?
like that you said diversity, because I feel like the soils only will last the test of time if you're changing up your crops. Like you cannot do a monocrop in the same area of the same vegetable every single year.
Yeah,
You gotta switch between
exactly. You'll
infield,
create a
plants.
deficiency very quickly. Yeah, some other examples are hugelkultur, Korean natural farming, no-till methods. There's a lot of different names for the different techniques of applying living soil. And I encourage you to study about them and find which one suits you, because, or one that suits your environment or your resources, because there's a lot going on that, again, it's an art, you know, you gotta express yourself. Hydroponics, it involves growing plants without the use of soil, usually mass-produced crops by using water-based mineral nutrient solution in aqueous solvents. So aqueous means water. I feel like they just repeated. But that's the major plus of this, is that there is a water crisis, and to be able to recycle your water over and over and over again is a huge plus. Over here, I wrote it's real and also not real, because water comes from people who own water. Don't listen to the water companies. They're scamming us. There's not really a water resource. The real crisis is of people who control resources who don't want to give them to other people. That's just my 2 cents. Hydro is typically used for mass cultivation, as I said, of specific plants to sell on an industrial scale. Like especially when there's one plant that produces a highly sought medicinal metabolite, such as Bacopa monterey, they will focus on this one specific plant, so that way they can immediately extract it and they can sell that on the market or make medicine out of it or do whatever they're doing with these plants. Hydro can produce significantly higher yield in a small amount of space. So this takes a little bit of engineering and such, and I'm sure there's somebody here that could tell you a lot about that. But the ability to take advantage of vertical space and you know, the ability to grow inside, take advantage of vertical space is a major plus for a lot of this stuff. But at the same time, some things cannot be or are currently impossible to hydroponically cultivate. I know some people have done things with tubers, but for the most part, it's not happening. And so that's why I say down here, like hint, hint, med plant chemist, that's a major fucking, excuse me, a major like resource right there. If somebody's able to figure that out, you're going to be very rich and you're going to do a lot of good things for the world, because if we can start making all of our own organic foods, and then, you know, you can imagine like some potatoes right there, then that's going to change the game for sure. And then there's like minimal cleaning, you know. It's a bit more specific though. You got to either buy these solutions that feed the nutrients pre-made, or so I'm sure everybody here is capable of making their own, but it requires a little bit more mental application, I think. But aeroponics is similar to hydroponics. It's considered a subset. Instead of using this here, these reservoirs, excuse me, instead of using this water housing unit here, the nutrient solution is atomized, and that also contributes to much better water recycling ability. And it allows you to know exactly like exactly what is going into your plants. And that's really good for us because a lot of us are going to be growing plants for research purposes and experimental purposes. That allows you to control the variables, regulate the conditions, and understand the core functions of the plants much better. So again, consumes far less water, like they're using it on the International Space Station to do research. It's really cool stuff. I've never built one, but I would like to eventually. Here we have got traditional agriculture, which is Illuminati confirmed. Traditional agriculture tills soils. Sometimes they light it on fire. Their reason for doing this is to kill all the life in the soil because farmers don't want to have to deal with these things when they're growing mass crops. The thing with mass crops, mass monocultured crops, is that it that in and of itself is kind of like an imbalance. If you get too much of one thing in one place, it will throw out the surrounding environment. And if they have like a patch of extremely fertile soil in the middle of this monoculture system, that's going to start doing things to their crops that they don't want. And so their job is to kill it. They use pesticides and fungicides and herbicides to kill all the life, which has never been the answer. And so another terrible thing about this is that these artificial, chemically synthesized, oftentimes made by like these large chemical companies or these large, people that own farms and stuff, it's a secret. Like you're not allowed to know. It's a legal secret. It's what are they called? It's like trade secrets, I guess. They're patented and you can't even know a lot of the times. And most people don't know. And what happens is that a lot of this stuff they're putting into the herbicides like atrazine and malathion and diazinon and glyphosate is a new one, are severe hormone dysregulators. They get into your neurology, they get into your endocrine system, and they mess you up. They mess people up. They lead to birth defects, like a lot of like the cancer, genetic damage, like quickened aging, malnutrition. There's a whole spectrum of, things that lead to a quicker death, basically. And so my motto is if you got to wear a PPE to grow it, you probably shouldn't eat it. Not only does this stuff get into the soil and stay in the soil, now the soil has to be bioremediated. And of course, again, the plants take them up. You eat the plants, we eat the plants, and it's no bueno. I mean, it's good in the sense that it's very profitable, but for enhanced quality, and it's good for mass production as well. But in terms of, getting the highest quality medicinal plants or crops, it's kind of a shady business. Like we've known this for a long time. If you took microbial ecology, maybe you've seen this slide somewhere else, but since 1936, they've been saying that, this is in the Congress. They're saying that today, most people in this country are suffering from certain dangerous diet deficiencies, which cannot be remedied until depleted soils from which our food comes are brought into the proper mineral balance. And what it says down here is also the alarming fact is that foods now being raised on millions of acres of land no longer contain enough of certain minerals. And because of their lack of mineral content, it is slowly starving us. So no matter how much of these plants we eat, we're never going to be nutritionally satiated. We may become emotionally satiated, but to have proper physical health, it's not so great. And so that's why I think living soils could lead into greater crop yields, better medicinal plants, and more potent nutrition. Imagine eating like a tomato and not being hungry for the rest of the week or something. That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but that's the kind of thing that's going on. And we're currently experiencing, like in our world, there's just, I don't want to get too much into the disease and the sickness and the dysbiosis of it all, but it's a clear and present danger to our society. So it's something we've known about for a while, and I don't think Congress is doing anything about it. If you haven't seen these documentaries on Netflix, like Kiss the Earth, there's another one on YouTube called Living Soil. It's a little bit more scientific. That one's great. Definitely check those out. Some of the, like, right, the benefits of agriculture, I'm not trying to be too biased here, but like there is a huge pre-existing industry you can join. You can gain chemistry knowledge and wisdom by looking at their tactics. You can learn their trade secrets. Maybe you could be a whistleblower and expose them. Also, it allows for advantageous GMO organisms to be mass produced. These are like designer crops, basically. It's more of a science and a business than I believe it is about feeding people and making medicine. You know, the main owner of farmland out there, some of the drawbacks is like you're constantly fighting nature. You have to fight the pests. You're using typically inorganic amendments, again, that are synthetically created. And all of this removes life, mineral value, nutritional value from the soil. Ultimately, it's poisonous in the long run to people and the earth. And you probably be working for Bill Gates, and screw that guy. So also I put down here is like research Linus Pauling. He's the creator of orthomolecular therapy and like popularized things like vitamin C and the importance of mineral nutrition as it relates to your psychology and your physiology. This is actually the chemist who they kind of accredit him with creating the field of biochemistry. He is also the guy who theorized electronegativity, which is a very important theory in chemistry. He went on after merging chemistry and biology to create orthomolecular therapy, which is a metaphor for the right molecules. He says that you basically need a certain amount of stuff from the environment, inorganic and nutrients that your body cannot produce. You need to get it from the environment. If you're not getting it in the right ratios and the right quantities, then you become sick. And so he believed that all sickness, mental and physical, can be traced to a mineral deficiency. And so I say that because it's just important. It's like really the source of life is all this stuff in the soil that we need and we cannot get unless we're working with nature. So summation, I hope that wasn't too biased towards living soil, but I really wanted to try to talk about like what I believe is the right way, and also what I've learned is truly something I forgot to say. It's like when you're using living soil, you're offsetting carbon emissions. And if we could replenish like all of Bill Gates' traditional agriculture with microbes and living soil, we can reverse global warming. We can make massive contributions to mitigating our carbon production. And you can write that off on your taxes and stuff. It's just like a superhero move for the environment, in my opinion. So there's like nothing more important right now in my mind than revitalizing the earth. So I think that much of nature is still vastly misunderstood. And if we look at it, we'll find that nearly every significant innovation in life comes from observing nature. By working with living soil, you produce higher quality medicinal plants. Oh yeah, there we go, offset carbon emissions. You learn more about the fundamental principles of life and how to work within a natural framework, which is something I think is severely lacking in our education. And this will eventually lead to breakthroughs in scientific understanding. So living soil is true gardening, understanding natural intelligence, and how nature is interconnected and interdependent with us and everything we're doing in it. Hydroponics is excellent as well for the aforementioned specialized purposes. Oftentimes a little bit difficult for the average grower, but absolutely something that we could all benefit from if we apply our own unique motivations to it. So I think everybody's got something to offer, especially here. And if we can just take the tools that are given to us and try to, benefit from them and let the world benefit from them, then we're going to have a much better existence here on Earth and all. So it's like, that's my presentation. Is there any questions, or did I confuse you, or anything I missed? What's up?
So if you're like trying to start your own living soil, how would you go about doing that?
Okay, great question. So that's what I was trying to get across up here. I should have made an individual slide about it, but that's this right here. This is this 3-3-3 rule. So like I was saying, it's hard to, you can't make all these soil layers at home. I've tried, it's difficult. Oops, I went too far, way too far. So the 3-3-3 rule is kind of taking this idea of the soil triangle of sand, silt, and clay, which is nutrients and minerals. That's an aeration component, and that is your base material component as well, the quote unquote bedrock. So you would take organic matter content. That is where your microbial life comes from. That's where all the life starts. So you want to get good organic matter content. I went to the co-op and I bought one of those white bags that came from like Ishpeming or something. I didn't know at the time it came from Ishpeming, but it was filled with a bunch of I was going to say shit. Obviously compost is all shit, but it's like bad. It was like bugs, and it was out of balance. It had some deficiencies. So you really want to know like where you're getting your compost from and make sure that it's good. Ideally make your own compost pile. Like as soon as you get some land or a house or a garden or whatever, like start composting organic matter content. That's the key to the whole thing, organic matter content, and just continually feeding it into the system. So that's 1/3. Say like you want a 3-gallon pot, you get a gallon of organic matter content. I would do it by weight, actually, not by volume, but you get 1/3 organic matter content, 1/3 aeration, which is sand. You can use perlite, like that's not occurring in nature, but it's okay. Sand is great. Perlite, vermiculite is does occur in nature. That's a natural mineral. And then you get the base material. And so you just mix those all up within equal ratio, and that's your base. You can grow weed out of that. Probably one time it would eat a bunch of soil and you would need to amend it after a minute or after a grow or two. But there are other like quote unquote super soil recipes out there which start with these 3, and then they will add like kelp meal, crab shells, and all sorts of different minerals that occur in nature that you can find at the hydro store, really, or wherever. Like you can find them all over the place, but like go to somebody who like specializes in living soil. If you want to know of a company who does it, if you don't already, it is oh shoot, what is that living soil people out of Colorado? Does anybody know?
But all the compost that you could get at the co-op here from Ishpeming is from Partridge Creek Farms.
Really?
Yeah, and it's good. They have
Yeah.
good compost.
Yeah,
We always just use 1/3 is whatever. So
Right.
we're using.
good stuff. Yeah, so there's a lot of resources on the internet. The name of this living soil company escapes me, but you can find a lot of different warehouses of people who are making or who are providing these natural amendments, which you add in with all of that, and then with the extra food, you could say, you can have a much initially longer lasting soil. And so the key is to keep feeding it organic matter content. That's why if you have, like, hypothetically, you're just growing cannabis in a single pot of living soil, you would want to add like cover crops in there and some nitrogen fixers and just other stuff like ground cover or like straw, like hay or something, which will eventually decompose and feed in as the plant is pulling out of it. So does that answer your question? I think the 3-3-3 rule is like the key takeaway. And then after that, you just like need to feed it organic matter content. So like KNFs, compost teas, like alfalfa, like just dead plants. Like you can throw your kitchen scraps in there, all kinds of stuff. And then you want to inoculate it with mushrooms and mycelium and all sorts of stuff. There's so much different forms of life out there that is good for the soil, that's good for the plants, that it's like kind of overwhelming to try to like wrap all your hands around. But this 333 is where to start. And I'm going to make some living soil like this weekend. So if anybody wants to hang out and do it, drink some beers, do whatever, I'll be here for it. But yeah. Any thoughts? Did that meet your expectations?
Yeah, thanks for presenting that.
I'm glad you liked it. Thank you. Or anything else? Anybody else going? That's it. That was fun.
I guess just the
Thank
key
you for having me.
takeaway is that plants are versatile, and like depending on how you choose to go about growing them, they can be grown. I mean, preferably to me, it would make sense that they're most optimal in nature. So as close as you can get it to that, that would be the best for it. But circumstances don't allow it. There's definitely ways that they can. But I just want to hear from y'all, like y'all's own experiences of like cultivating plants. Like, what have y'all seen is the best?
I
Or
would
like,
definitely disagree with you guys, and I totally think hydroponics is the move. But that's just because we only have a finite amount of land, you know, and it uses so much water, and there are so many places, like, because of the climate crisis, that are getting less and less water, more and more dry. Their soils are being overused. We have homes and more homes and buildings that are abandoned than people, basically, than all homeless people, you know, so like we could utilize all that space with vertical farming
Yeah.
in such a small space. You could grow so much, and you save on basically everything other than your energy usage. But there are easy ways to make it very, very eco-friendly and profitable. Yeah,
definitely, yeah. And I
and it
think,
can be done organically too. It's just more expensive.
yeah. I think you pointed out that like the soil, like the nutrient, like has been, the nutrients in the soil have been depleting throughout the years. And if you want to hear more about that, there's actually somebody at the school who's doing that. Dr. Dr. Van Gramson. He's been doing research, like concurrent research that's like explaining more in depth about that. But that is an issue as well with like agriculture and land farming, is the soil is just getting ran through essentially, like it's leaching all the chemicals down through the soil, and all the beneficial chemicals that the plant should be uptaking aren't there as
I
much as
can't
they should
remember
be.
the exact statistic, but it was like 1/3
Mhm.
of all of our like produce nowadays, or our produce nowadays has 1/3 the nutritional content that it did 40 years ago.
Yeah, I heard something like along those lines too. And I've seen like vertical, there's like hydroponics setups where it's like, or even aeroponics where it's like a giant rotating wheel, and they like stack them, and it's just like the way it rotates like helps the way the plants grow, and it gets like full light efficiency all the way around. So there's definitely different ways to grow.
Probably another benefit of hydroponics, I'd say, is how localized it could be, because plants lose nutrition very fast once they're
Mhm.
harvested. And when you could make everything on a local scale in places you can't grow, like cities and stuff like that,
Yeah,
it just keeps it fresh. Yeah, in your own home, you know, it just makes the food much better.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, any other examples that y'all had like with cultivating? Because personally, I'm not, I mean, I have a brown thumb, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I found like that I'm better at growing mushrooms. That's just me. Theo.
Yeah, so I actually got to be with my caretaker as he evolved from synthetic newts to a living soil bed in the basement, and I can tell you the living soil has such a better taste than what the synthetic newts used to provide.
Okay.
Yeah, the living soil of cannabis is typically top shelf stuff.
Anybody else? There, Rev, I know you grow a lot, man.
Do you think that hydroponic produce has, like, meets the nutritional stuff that we need?
All the stuff I've grown hydroponically, it just tastes so much better than anything you get at the store. But also same with living, like at the farm I worked at over the summer, all our produce is with living soils at Partridge Creek. They make all their own compost, and that is like some of the best produce I've tasted too. So it could go either way. We use the farm permaculture for one of our farm sites, like using Google mounds. So it's like stacking up old trees or like just yeah, it's like dead trees and then covering it with soil, and all that stuff did really well. And yeah, I feel like what's really good about permaculture is that you kind of just set it like it's supposed to be self-sustainable. It'll last every year, you know, if you plant with perennials, you just harvest.
Nice. Yeah, also one other thing that wasn't touched on was tissue cultures, of how you like can culture like your plant and like
I
keep
was pulling up that slide from last year. I was trying to find
yeah, I mean, I haven't, I mean, I've only done like a tissue culture in plant physiology, and it was very interesting. It was super difficult to keep sterile, but it turned out pretty good. You just got to be careful. Tissue
Yeah,
culture,
what is that?
you like get like a part of,
in vitro or is it in vivo?
yeah, I think it's in
vivo.
in
Yeah, it's
vivo.
grown in vivo.
You like get like a apical meristem or like an active portion of the plant. You like cut it and you put it on like an agar plate, and it grows.
And they have cool things now, like hairy root cultures and like, what are they called, like bioactivators or something, where you could grow like plants through. Yeah, I'm trying. That's what
I'm sorry, man. That's not my
You'll
cup
learn
of
about it
tea.
soon. You'll learn about it in the lectures.
Yeah, but yeah, just I mean they're good for the environment that you like live in. If you're growing plants in your home, they'll fix the air. I mean, however you go about planting plants and growing them, they're beneficial, and there's many ways to go about that. So yeah.
Spec of
I really hope this
hydroponics.
converts.
There's